From Lagos, Nigeria, this is News Central. My name is Mazino Appeal. Our top stories tonight. Nigerian-born British boxer Anthony Joshua survives car crash that left 2 dead on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And FCT Minister Nyesom Wike claps back at Oyo State Governor, says defection of Rivers Governor to APC does not guarantee his re-election. Also coming up, Russia accuses Ukraine of targeting President Putin's residence, a claim Kiev describes as blatant lie.
President Bola Tinubu approves cancellation of NNPCL debts owed to the Federation account.
And in sports, South Africa's Bafana edged rival Zimbabwe in 5-goal thriller to qualify for ongoing AFCON knockout phase.
Tonight begins now. Welcome again. Now to begin tonight on, well, a rather sad note. A Nigerian-born British boxer Anthony Joshua was involved in a road accident on Monday along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway near Sagamu, resulting in 2 fatalities. The former 2-time heavyweight champion sustained only minor injuries and was taken to a hospital for medical attention. Police confirmed the crash occurred after a tyre burst caused the vehicle Joshua was traveling in to lose control and collide with a stationary truck. Joshua was seated in the back of the vehicle at the time of the incident. Authorities say investigations are ongoing, with an official police statement expected as fans await further updates on Joshua's condition. Our News Central sports editor, Tunde Koiki, joins us now for the conversation. So, Koiki, I saw you earlier on today, and having this same conversation, I'm wondering exactly what we know about the incident. It was said that he was traveling with 2 companions who lost their lives. Could you give us confirmation about this, please?
So what we know, Mazino, is that it was a 2-vehicle convoy, 2 SUVs. Joshua's SUV was the one that was involved in the car accident. The driver we don't know exactly what happened. There's talks on maybe it was overspeeding, which is most likely. There was also talk about maybe there was a ruptured tire, which is also possible as well. But what saved Joshua's life was he was sitting right behind the driver. It was the 2 gentlemen, unfortunate souls, who were sitting on the passenger side, who bore the brunt of the accident and subsequently lost their lives. This happened on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which is a major route, probably one of the busiest routes in Nigeria. Unfortunately, it also records it's more than its fair share of fatalities. There's almost no week in Nigeria that you do not hear stories of probably 10, 5, 6, or whatever number of people dying on that stretch of road quite regularly. So I wouldn't say it's a death trap, but there's still a lot of questions regarding what happened during to cause the accident itself, then what happened afterwards. Now, if you look at the pictures on your screen, you are seeing Joshua being extricated from the vehicle, which is a very dangerous thing to do. Normal procedure after an accident is to wait for emergency services, medical personnel to extricate the person in case there might be injuries that are unforeseen.
All right. Let's talk about his condition. What was his condition when he was taken out of the vehicle?
Well, he was conscious, but if you do look closely at the videos, he seemed to be grimacing.
Yeah.
There seemed to be some pain. We're not exactly sure, which is why I continue to say that unless the vehicle is on fire, where there's a clear and present danger to life, there is absolutely no reason for Anthony Joshua to have been extricated when he was by passers. I know they were well-wishers, they were trying to do good, but sometimes experts. You can do more harm while trying to do good.
Has there been any communication or any, perhaps maybe the boxing community, especially the international boxing community, have they put out any statement?
Well, we've not heard anything officially from his promoter, Eddie Hearn, nothing from Matchroom Promotions, who has his promoters as well. But we have seen responses from Jake Paul, who was his last opponent, who he defeated a few days ago, who was also commiserating with him. There's also, I believe, something from Chris Eubank Jr., another very well-known British boxer who was also commiserating with him. And also, Mazina, I must say it's very painful to note that we do know the identities of the two gentlemen who died. They are very close inner circle members of Joshua's camp. One of them is, I believe his name is Sami Gami. He's his strength and conditioning coach. There's also Kevin Abdulatif Ayodele, who is also his personal trainer. Two key members of Anthony Joshua's inner circle, and he died instantly on the spot.
That's very sad. I wish that we could actually talk about the psychological effect that this could have on him and his career, which I imagine must,
considerable.
Yeah, it's going to be considerable. Well, Kweki, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Now to politics. FCT Minister Nyesom Wike has accused some members of the People's Democratic Party of working to destroy the party, while also blaming them for accusing him of plotting to create a one-party state. Now, Wike said certain party leaders were undermining internal democracy within the PDP. Addressing the press on national issues on Monday in Port Harcourt, Rivers State, Wike alleged that Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde took a small group of supporters to Lagos and disqualified prominent members of the party from key processes. He maintained that such actions were harmful to the party's unity and warned that internal divisions could weaken the party, that's the PDP, ahead of future political engagements.
Something that would have been easily solved. Listen to the voice of elders. Don't go ahead. Let's form caretaker committee. Today, PDP has no candidate in Ekiti State. Today, PDP has no candidate in Osun State. Now, when you say one-party state, who is making us have a one-party state? If you have listened to people and allowed due process to take place, would the issue of one-party state arise? You are the one who is creating one-party state, and yet you are accusing the government of trying to have a one-party state. Just listen to what people have said and follow due process. By now, we wouldn't have been talking about one-party state. Now, having taken wrong steps by destroying your party, you are now accusing the other party of wanting to have a one-party state. It doesn't make sense. People have gone to court to say, look, you can't go ahead with this convention. Why would you not go ahead with convention? So many states have not had their congresses. How will you deny states of participating in the national convention? You have 36 states. About 16 states have not had any congresses. And therefore, they are not eligible to vote in that convention. 16 states. And people went to court and said, no, you cannot do this. Let's follow due process. Take, for example, you want to do zoning. I'm a minister of the Federal Republic. We have senators from the south. What Seyi Makinde did was to call a few people and take them to Lagos and said that, oh, that they have done.
Still on Rivers politics, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has said that Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara is free to defect to the All Progressives Congress without his approval, but warned that switching parties does not guarantee an automatic win in the 2027 elections. Wike made the remarks during his monthly media live chat at his Port Harcourt country home on Monday. Fubara left the People's Democratic Party for the APC in early December after a closed-door meeting with President Bola Tinubu in Abuja, citing desire to give full support to the president ahead of the general elections. Wike described the defection as natural, noting that several houses or House of Assembly members and council chairmen had previously joined the ruling party. He emphasized that political victories must be earned, not assumed. Political commentator and lawyer Liberace Oshoma joins me now to discuss Rivers politics and the PDP crisis ahead of 2027. Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Now, Mr. Oshoma, Rivers politics has entered a phase where, let's face it, loyalty is no longer assumed. It has to be constructed. So the question that we're going to be asking now is, exactly how does Governor Fubara intend to make sure that his strategy from now on is one that builds his group within the APC instead of the PDP, also noting that the APC has a very strong structure from already?
Yeah, thank you very much. First and foremost, before I quickly answer your question, permit me to quickly say that I listened to the media chat, the sound bite that you played there, and I completely agree with everything Wike has said there. the convention of the PDP in Ibadan was a convention that ordinarily was on the path of self-destruct. You can't conduct a convention without congresses at the state level. But that said, coming back to Port Harcourt, River State, coming into the APC, we had always known that Wike had one leg in APC and one leg in the PDP. And that's why the local government election that was conducted in River State the last time, we saw it was almost like an arrangement, Ihindeba kind of arrangement. So against that backdrop, certainly, a lot of people had said the moment Fubara entered APC that it was a done deal for him and that Wike was a gunner. But if you are a political watcher, you will know that it is not yet over or it is over. Because Wike already had his foothold in APC even before Fubara came in there. And that's why, if you remember, what even led to the crisis in the House of Assembly was whether the men had decamped, Wike's men had decamped from the PDP to APC. You know, did they defect or didn't defect? That was what led to that crisis. And so, which means that Wike, to a very large extent, has a foothold in APC. And so, it's not going to be that easy for Fubara. But also, you have, like you said, he decamped after he visited the president. So you also have the angle of Mr. President, you know, hovering around that decamping. So certainly, if he has the support, the full support of Mr. President, both men, you know, will not have to work for Mr. President. So if he has the full support of Mr. President, Wike works for Mr. President. So Mr. President can always find a way to rein in Wike. So certainly, it is it's still game on, like they say.
Well, it's still sad to note that it's no longer based on what you earn, but based on your proximity to the presidency. But let's leave that aside for now. Now, while the spotlight is on the governor, many believe that real chess players, or the real chess player in this drama is actually Nyesom Wike. So looking at Wike's current posture, what are the likely legal strategies that he may deploy to retain influence in Rivers politics, noting that he is a very strategic person himself?
Yeah, Wike has always been known to use the courts, you know, to get whatever he wants. And you remember, while he was governor in 2019, you know, the opposition, some persons alleged that, you know, he had his hands in the opposition and they battled it out in court. And at the end of the day, the opposition didn't even have a candidate, a strong contender, not to talk of, you know, having the opportunity to run against the incumbent then, Wike. So now also, you remember the last time his supporters, there were allegations of decamping or not decamping, he battled it up to the Supreme Court. So certainly for this one, now he had said he's not leaving the PDP, he will remain in APC. He's not leaving the APC, he will remain in PDP, and he will work for the APC, support of Mr. President. So even though he has his men in APC, to a very large extent, you know, you can say he will not fully dictate what happens in APC because the APC as a party still have Mr. President, like I said earlier on. But he would have, you know, to a very large extent, you know, a say in the Congress on who elects or who determines, at the Congress that will determine the election or the primaries of the governor in the state. And if the president looked the other way, certainly his faction, his supporters faction of the APC might have their way. And you know, if they have their way, certainly they are going to slug it out in court because you have two factions of the APC presently in Rivers State. You know, one, we all know supports Wike, and then the other one, you know, that has always been there. So, but the only difference here is that you have Mr. President, you know, at the top of, you know, both candidates. Unlike before, when the PDP had no leader to call Wike to order.
So it leaves much to actually anticipate, noting that the president is involved on both sides here. But we've seen this before. We've seen this when it came to Amechi versus Odili, Fayose, Adebayo, Obaseki and Oshomole, and also Ganduje and Kwankwa. So this time Wike and Fubara. It's not new. Godfather and godson systems, they always shake. Now, from past court precedents, who usually wins these battles? The incumbent with state power or the godfather with deep party roots?
The difference in all of those ones, Obaseki and Oshomole, for example, you had a president who was laid back, who was, provided, who was lackadaisical. He didn't want to interfere. In other cases, you had also a godfather who didn't have, that kind of influence at the center. But in this case, the numbers are different, the parameters are different, the actors are different. If Wike were not a minister at the center, certainly you would say Fubara would have his way. But Wike is a minister at the center, Fubara is a state governor. Fubara also has, to a very large extent, the tacit support of Mr. President, and also Wike enjoys the backing of Mr. President. So at the end of the day, it is not either of them that will determine this time. Like I said, unlike when it was in PDP, there was nobody to call Wike to order. But now you still have a leader at the center. So it is what the leader determines at the end of the day that will happen. But still, the people also, because now there's even more opposition in Rivers State, whether we like it or not. Wike is in PDP, but we all know that he's in APC. So it is what the president eventually decides. And if the president decides that Fubara should go, Wike would grumble, but at the end of the day, he will work for him.
Well, Mr. Liberus, Oshoma, I want to say thank you very much for joining us. We have very limited time on tonight, but we will have this conversation on other platforms. We have our seats set for 2027. We'll wait to see what happens with the Fubara versus Wike versus APC episode. Thank you, Mr. Liberus Oshoma.
Yes, my pleasure, always.
Coming up tonight, Abuja car washers turn woes to wealth as Dusty Haze improves business for them. We'll tell you more after the break. Do stay with us. You're welcome back. You're watching Tonight on News Central. A reminder of our top stories. Nigerian-born British boxer Anthony Joshua survives car crash that left 2 dead on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And FCT Minister Nyesom Wike claps back at Oyo State Governor, says defection of Rivers Governor to APC does not guarantee his re-election. Still ahead, Russia accuses Ukraine of targeting President Putin's residence, a claim Kiev describes as blatant lie. Nigeria's foreign relations have once again drawn international attention, triggered by the military action from the U.S. in the country's northwest. Now, while President Bola Tinubu remains active on the global stage, seeking investment and also international cooperation, his government faces questions over unified or rather unfulfilled ambassadorial positions in key foreign missions. Amid all this, News Central's Israel Ifiribo explores how Nigeria is balancing global engagement with domestic diplomatic gaps.
New York to Riyadh and the G20 summit in South Africa. President Bola Tinubu has made Nigeria's presence felt on the world stage, pushing for partnership, fair trade and investment in Africa's largest economy.
My responsibility this afternoon is to tell you, the Qataris, that Nigerians are your friends. Open for business.
Now let's take a look at President Bola Tinubu's diplomatic trips within the year 2025. In January, President Tinubu began the year in Ghana, attending the inauguration of President-elect John Mahama in Accra from the 6th to the 7th. Now, days later, between January 12th and 16th, the president traveled to the United Arab Emirates, where he attended the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Summit and held side meetings with Gulf investors on trade and cooperation. Now, by January 27th up until the 28th, he was in Tanzania participating in the Africa Heads of State Energy Summit in Dar es Salaam. Between February and August, President Bola Tinubu visited France, Ethiopia, United Kingdom, St. Lucia, and he also went to Brazil for the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Within the period, the president also touched down in Japan. Now, by September, President Tinubu returned to France and the United Kingdom for a 10-day working vacation. In November, President Bola Tinubu was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the G20 summit in South Africa. And much later in November, the president also was represented by Kashim Shettima, the Vice President, in a summit in the AU-EU summit in Angola. That was between November 24th and November 25th. Well, this sums up the timeline of President Tinubu's diplomatic trips in 2025, which highlight diplomatic efforts to strengthen global partnerships while advancing economic growth, security cooperation, and indeed climate resilience. To the 7th. Now, days later, between January 12th and 16th, the president traveled to the United Arab Emirates, where he attended the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Summit and held side meetings with Gulf investors on trade and cooperation. Now, by January 27th up until the 28th, he was in Tanzania participating in the Africa Heads of State Energy Summit in Dar es Salaam. Between February and August, President Bola Tinubu visited France, Ethiopia, United Kingdom, St. Lucia, and he also went to Brazil for the 17th BRICS Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Within the period, the president also touched down in Japan. Now, by September, President Tinubu returned to France and the United Kingdom for a 10-day working vacation. In November, President Bola Tinubu was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the G20 summit in South Africa. And much later in November, the president also was represented by Kashim Shettima, the Vice President, in a summit in the AU-EU summit in Angola. That was between November 24th and November 25th. Well, this sums up the timeline of President Tinubu's diplomatic trips in 2025, which highlight diplomatic efforts to strengthen global partnerships while advancing economic growth, security cooperation, and indeed climate resilience.
But recent remarks from U.S. President Donald Trump, which describes Nigeria as country of particular concern, have stirred debate.
Could be. I mean, a lot of things I envisage, a lot of things. They're killing record numbers of Christians. And we're not going to allow that to happen.
The Nigerian government has since responded, describing Trump's comments as unfortunate and uninformed. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuggar, at a press conference in Berlin, says it's impossible for there to be a religious persecution in the country.
Nigeria's constitutional commitment to religious freedom and rule of law. All the answers are in there. And this is what guides us. And this is what shows that it's impossible for there to be a religious persecution that can be supported in any way, shape, or form by the government of Nigeria.
Of course, everybody knows that it's a wrong narrative, that there's genocide. I think what we should be quarreling about is the word genocide. Genocide is systematic, deliberate effort to exterminate a group. There's no such systematic effort.
Except we admit we have security challenges due to factors, many of them beyond our control. So any country, including the US, that is willing to partner with us to tackle those problems, we more than welcome it.
Whatever the US president may have said should be seen in the context of the country's interest in Africa as a clear leading continent, and in Nigeria as the main driver of that continent.
Analysts, however, say Trump's comment highlights a valid concern that prolonged vacancies in foreign missions limits Nigeria's diplomatic reach.
You have seen how tough the environment is. Appoint competent people to ambassadorial posts, not political imbeciles who are just going there, warm the seat, and have nothing to offer. You must weigh every nominee on the basis of what he can achieve, his experience, his antecedents, his qualification, so that people can be effective representatives, so that we don't get this kind of Trump embarrassment.
There are those who argue that President Tinubu's one-on-one diplomacy is yielding results with renewed interest to fill its ambassadorial positions. The government insists that its international outreach is part of a broader plan to reposition Nigeria. With the government putting finishing touches on the appointment of ambassadors, Nigerians are hoping that this move will re-establish the country as a regional power, with key tasks will be ensuring that every handshake abroad translates.
So coming up along with that report, I will be joined by my colleague, the report you've just seen by Israel Ifrobo. He joins us here inside of the studio. And also joining is going to be Professor Iyala, who's also going to be joining us after the break. So let's stay put, gentlemen, and we'll be back to have this conversation. Welcome back for that conversation. As said from before, Israel Ifrobo, News Central correspondent who put in that report, joins us now, alongside Professor Iyala Peterside, who's going to be talking to us on these matters. But first off, let me talk to you, Ife. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, Ife, it's been 2 years since Nigeria has been operating with skeletal diplomatic, what do you call them, offices outside the country. So when should Nigeria be expecting that we will have these deployments? And exactly which missions have suffered the most when it comes to this vacuum?
Okay, thank you so much. This is, it's a special report. There was a whole lot that we couldn't capture into that report. But the key thing here is that the missions abroad have been having, so to speak, like without a head, without the charge d'affaires, without, there are charge d'affaires, but the ambassador hasn't been there for a very, very long time now, for 2 years now, since the administration of President Bola Tinubu came on board. And we were told that one of the reasons for that was because of financial constraints here and there. Remember how the president came on, he said subsidy was over, it was gone, and then so funds was one of the major reasons. But yes, indeed, this missions abroad have been sustaining itself and going ahead to do the business of trying to manage Nigeria's international relations. The president as well also made lots of travels in the year 2025, which we all saw. He was Nigeria's #1 image maker,
diplomat.
So to speak. Yes, diplomat. Exactly. It was the biggest diplomat for the country, and rightly so. So he went to lots of countries. So yes, indeed. How soon can we expect these ambassadors to resume in these missions abroad? The Minister of Foreign Affairs spoke just about a week ago that there are lots of processes that needs to still be finalized. So we're looking at how many months? No, I think everything should be settled in January, and then all of this ambassadors that have been confirmed by the Senate will now have to go to the various countries to start work. And there are key countries where they need to hit the ground running. Talk about the US, France, the UK, major countries, abroad, where Nigeria's image is indeed a very, very key factor when it comes to international relations and Nigeria's development.
Okay, let's turn to Professor Iyala Peterside. Professor, I hope you're still with us. Professor, 2026 may be the year that Nigeria either reasserts itself globally or fades into, further into diplomatic irrelevance. How critical is the immediate deployment of ambassadors, would you say?
Good evening, everybody. I think that it's disappointing that it took 2 years to get diplomats into our missions. So, and that brings to fore the necessity for bricks and mortar things done. The president did a lot of traveling, but after all those handshakes and photo ops, you need people on the ground to effect whatever was agreed on and push the agenda for the country. And I think that is where we have fallen behind a lot. If you look at on paper, there was a lot of success, especially on economic diplomacy. But when you then turn around and see how much of that had been translated into brick-and-mortar jobs, investments directly into the country, they fall far short of expectation.
Okay.
And given the intricacies of getting all these ambassadors settled down, it will be almost 2027, which is, the next 12 to 18 months, politics starts again.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the list of people who are there, most of them are politicians. How many of them will be on their stations waiting for the elections? And so it's pretty disappointing that we are here now, 2 years after the elections, and we're just getting ambassadors.
It is rather embarrassing, Professor. Professor, we have commitments on paper, but the streets are still waiting for factories, ports, and also jobs. From a policy standpoint, what must
after those handshakes? Mm-hmm. After those handshakes, we need people to walk the system to get those agreements become a reality.
And exactly that, Professor. So my question is, what must Nigeria change structurally to turn these foreign investment pledges into visible, bankable projects for 2026?
Our response time has to be faster. You don't see this in most other countries. Our response time has to be faster. I want to pay emphasis on what matters and not, the president doesn't need to travel as much as he did if he had people on the ground who could deputize for him, who could speak for him, and who, if they said something, the countries that they were talking to were sure that they were getting, a clear message from the president, or that they were listening to somebody who had the president's ear. And that has been the problem.
All right, now let's talk about that handshake to groundbreaking now, and that's you, Israel.
Yeah.
They keep quoting billions over and over. But from what you've gathered, from what you've seen in your various reports, which of these commitments have actually moved from handshake to groundbreaking? Has there been any? Do we have statistics of any, and how many?
So when things like this happen, when the president moves around, the world, trying to attract this investment into the country, there are lots of MOUs that have been signed. Some of this agreement that we hear about, some of them, like what we've seen, what we've read, what we're trying to find out, are still in that process. And like Professor did alluded to a while back, there are lots of processes that still need to go on, even after that handshake. So
we've not seen many move from handshake to...
One major thing that has happened is the fact that, the entourage that went to Brazil for the BRICS summit, there was a maiden flight, from Brazil to Lagos, and that route wasn't open before. So that is, and it was by air peace. So that route has now been opened up, and that means more businesses for Nigerians, and indeed it simply means that the inflow from Brazil to Lagos and from Lagos to Brazil will now be much higher than what we had in previous years. So that is one gain from all of this that I can right now point to, Mazino.
Well, one gain, we'll hang on to that one.
Absolutely.
Then. Thank you very much, Ife Israel, and thank you very much, Professor Iyala Petersai, for joining me for this conversation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Now, the Harmattan season is fully settled in the Federal Capital Territory, bringing with it the characteristic dusty haze that coats everything in sight within hours. Now, while this is a source of daily frustration for motorists who struggle to keep their vehicles clean, it has become a season of boom for car wash operators across the city. News Central's Sagir Ibrahim visited some car wash centers in Abuja to see how the dust is driving their profits.
Abuja's tropical weather means that when the rains go and the season becomes dry, cars suffer just as much as their owners. An extremely dry atmosphere combined with a consistent dust haze means drivers are forced to visit the car wash more frequently than usual.
Baba, they wash car 2 times in a day. This one is the second time why they wash them today. So we check them by 1 week. Sometimes 3 times, it depends.
If it's rainy season, okay, at times I don't even wash for 2 days. But now, man, it's crazy, man. Wash like even 3 times, depending on the route you apply.
As the saying goes, one man's food is another man's poison. While motorists complain about the cost and stress of constant cleaning, car wash attendants are smiling to the bank.
If I get those kind of customers every day, like 2 times, like 10 or 20 like this, if I want to go outside, my pocket would not full. Yes, na cash out.
Dry season. If dry season come like this, they still work normally. As they happy, they celebrate, they enjoy them.
Some operators, however, say every season is a good season, so long as service delivery is top-notch. Others cited alternative reasons for washing their cars more frequently beyond just the weather.
We don't have any peak period here. Every time is a peak period for us. And we are giving them the best of service. That's why some of them, they even come from Kubwa, some are from Gwagwalada, coming here directly just to wash their car.
Both dry season and rainy season, Baba, because road bad, road no good.
Whether the season comes or goes, one thing is certain. Car owners will do what is affordably necessary to maintain a sharp and clean aesthetic. And for car wash operators, while the dust brings the cars in, the quality of service is what ultimately decides if they come back. In Abuja for News Central, Sagir Ibrahim.
Now, families of 7 abducted construction workers in Kwara State have appealed to the state government and law enforcement agencies in the country to help rescue their loved ones. The workers were abducted 15 days ago while reportedly carrying out construction work along the Sabaja-Owa-Onire Road in Kwara State. Addressing a press conference in Ilorin, the state capital, the families disclosed that the abductors are demanding a ransom of 500 million naira for the release of the workers. They describe the ordeal of wives and children of the abductees as deeply traumatic.
We call on the Kwara State government and relevant security agencies to please intensify rescue efforts and treat this abduction as a top priority emergency until every victim is safely returned home. 2, we urge government to establish direct communication with the affected families, so we are not left to rely on rumors and social media for information about our loved ones. Number 3, we appeal for immediate support for the families of the abducted workers, including welfare assistance and counseling, as many households are already in this.
And outside Nigeria, hundreds of Somalis marched in Mogadishu, the capital of Somalia, to protest against Israel's decision to recognize Somaliland as an independent state. Abductors carried demonstrators carried Somali flags, chanted slogans like "Somalia is indivisible," and held signs saying the move threatened their country's sovereignty and unity. The protests came just hours after President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud addressed an emergency session of Somalia's parliament, strongly condemning Israel's action and calling it a violation of international law and an attack on national territory. In hopes of attaining peace in the Ukraine, war appeared to be under renewed strain after fresh accusations from Moscow. Russia says Ukraine attempted to attack President Vladimir Putin's residence in northern Russia. The Kremlin has provided no evidence to support the claim. Ukrainian officials have dismissed the accusation as baseless, calling it an effort to undermine ongoing peace negotiations. Russian officials say they are reviewing their position in negotiations following the alleged incident. We'll return with business, sports, and entertainment. Do stay with us.
This segment is brought to you by MoneyPoint.
President Bola Tinubu has approved the cancellation of $1.42 billion and 5.57 trillion naira in legacy debts owed by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to the Federation account, clearing obligations up to December 2024. The move follows recommendations from the Stakeholder Alignment Committee on reconciliation of indebtedness. While legacy debts are wiped fresh, 2025 obligations remain. With total approved revenue at 13.25 trillion naira and actual collection at 7.6 trillion naira, highlighting ongoing shortfalls and structural challenges in oil and gas revenue mobilization. Cape Town Container Terminal is improving its global ranking, boosted by rising fruit and renewed public-private partnership. Handling 80% of South Africa's perishable deciduous fruit, refrigerated container volumes rose 32% over 8 months. With overall exports up 24%, the partnership with the Western Cape government, Transnet, and industry adds generators and plug points to maintain cold chain stability. Investments in new cranes, upgraded warehouses, and innovative equipment have strengthened efficiency, safeguarded exports, supported jobs, and positioned the port for long-term growth. We will be back with the market report after this break. The bulls showed up at the NGX today, but they didn't come alone. The all-share index climbed 0.55% to close at 154,389.53 points, lifting market capitalization to 98.43 trillion naira. Now, however, beneath the headline gain, the story was far from uniform. Let's take a look at sectoral performance. Now, consumer goods stocks stole the spotlight with a strong rally, cushioning weakness in the banking space, with slipped into the red. Oil and gas barely moved, while industrial goods posted modest gains, signaling a market driven more by selective buying than broad-based confidence. Let's take a look at the breakdown. Now, banking closed in the red at 0.28%. Insurance didn't make a move. Oil and gas was up 0.01%, a very modest move. Consumer goods 2.16%, and industrial goods closed at 0.19%. Now, in the end, today's gains reflected selective buying rather than a broad rally. Consumer goods led the charge, offsetting weakness in banking stocks as investors stayed cautious and sector focused. The question now is whether this narrow momentum can widen into a stronger market trend. That's all on Business Tonight. My name is Chamun Dabeng.
This segment is brought to you by MoneyPoint.
Nigeria Super Eagles continued their final preparation ahead of the final Group C match against Uganda in First tomorrow. Head coach Eric Shell confirmed goalkeeper Stanley Wabali and midfielder Frank Oyeka are nursing minor knee and ankle issues respectively, but took part in light training today. Shell also revealed that Victor Osimhen has some discomfort but remains fit and available. Speaking at the press conference, Eric Shell hinted at surprise squad rotations with an eye on the knockout phase. South Africa secured a place in the last 16 of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations after edging Zimbabwe 3-2 in a Group B match at the Marrakesh Stadium on Monday. Goals from Shebang Moremi, Lyle Foster, and a late penalty by Oswin Apollis earned Bafana second place in the group behind Egypt. They will face the Group F runners-up in the knockout stage on January 4th in Rabat. Zimbabwe, who finished bottom of the group, twice fought back through Tawanda Mawashinye and an own goal by Aubrey Mudiba, but were undone by Apopoulos' decisive spot kick following a VAR review. South Africa controlled large spells of the match and held firm under late pressure to seal qualification. Now, in the latest scores, in the other group encounters currently ongoing, Comoros and Mali have played out a 0-0 draw, and Zimbabwe and Morocco currently leading that game 3-0. And that's all on Sports News tonight. Entertainment is next with Edewa. I am Okweoluwa Adibari.
right, and on entertainment quickly. Now, Funke Akindele has done it again. Her latest movie, Behind the Scenes, has officially crossed the 1 billion naira mark at the box office, setting a new record in Nollywood. The film, praised for its engaging storyline and stellar performances, has captivated audiences nationwide, cementing Funke's status as one of Nigeria's top filmmaker and actor. Industry experts say this milestone is a testament to her consistency and the growing appetite for quality Nigerian cinema. Fans have taken to social media to celebrate this achievement, with many